LHP residents who are here doing their civic duty to participate in the electoral process. Huge thanks to our property manager, Kevin Mitchell, for organizing this event. In addition to the main entrance, there are 2 emergency exits on either side of the room at the back. There is a defibrillator located in the foyer wall just outside the doors of this room. Hopefully nothing occurs here today that makes it need. Format for this meeting will be a 2-minute introduction by themselves of each candidate, with whatever else they can fit in that time. Starting with mayoral candidates, followed by deputy mayoral candidates, and lastly by councillor candidates, all in alphabetical order. Followed by questions posed by the moderator with answers by all candidates, alternating in reverse and alphabetical order. If there is time, the floor will be open for questions. The moderator posed questions are an amalgamation of those which were submitted by residents in advance as requested. If some of the nuance of your question is lost in the amalgamation, I apologize. Before we start with the introductions, a few words on electoral process and municipal government. On the town website, collingwood.ca, you can determine if you are on the voters list, register if you are not, and get instruction on how and when to vote. In-person voting will be at the Collingwood Library. You may also vote online from anywhere you have an internet connection. In the last election, online voting experienced difficulties at the 11th hour due to a high volume. To be safe, it is perhaps best to vote early. Hopefully the system prevents voting often. 1 mayor, 1 deputy mayor, and 7 councillors are elected by Collingwood electors at large. There is no ward system. The mayor and deputy mayor serve as the representatives of Collingwood on the Simcoe County Council. The councillor who garners the most votes in an election serves as the alternate county council representative. Many of the things we consider town services are in fact provided by the county. Okay, let's get the ball rolling with the mayoral candidate introduction. There's a microphone there somewhere. Ms. Hamlin, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Hamlin. Our town's facing major...
Stand up.
Stand up. Oh, thank you. I hate sitting down on time. Okay, good. I won't fall asleep, sure. Our town's facing major changes, and the decisions we make are going to change our community for generations. As a current councillor and as a former municipal lawyer who practiced in numerous municipalities, I have the background and to say to you, I know how the system works, and I know how to get the best deal for Collingwood. We need development that respects our community and our existing neighborhood and gives us the community benefits we're entitled to. In addition, I've been an active member of the town's Affordable Housing Task Force. I know to have a sustainable community, we need action now on getting housing for people who work here, and that will be a priority for me. I'm also committed to keeping our town livable, and I have championed over the last 4 years and will continue to champion such things as safe streets and better environmental standards. I'm a wife, and between my husband and myself, we have 5 children and 1 beautiful grandson who's a year old. We moved out of the Beaches neighborhood of Toronto in 2009 and bought our first home in Collingwood in 2010. Some of my most proud accomplishments over the past 4 years have been securing a $500,000 donation, private donation to plant trees in Collingwood. I advocated successfully and got the provincial cap lifted on family doctors setting up practice here. And I also led the initiative to update our town's official planning process. In conclusion, our town is been successful in navigating out of our water shortage crisis. We're about to go to tender on construction of an expanded water plant, and all of the shovel-ready projects have been getting their water allocated to them. We are fiscally in amazing shape, and I look forward to having the opportunity to continue serving you in the upcoming 4 years. Thank you.
Thanks for being here to show your interest in Collingwood's future. I know Collingwood, and I know the job, and I'm ready to serve as mayor. The mayor's primary job is to run an efficient and effective meeting, and I've learned how to do that as chair of the Conservation Authority for 2 years. The mayor has to listen to the entire town and to understand, defend, and explain the decisions that are made by all of council, even when they disagree with them. The mayor also represents Collingwood really to the rest of the world, the United Nations, the province, Simcoe County Council, like I've been doing for the last year or so. But remember, town council isn't about procedures, it's about policies. We learned the hard way through the events of the judicial inquiry what happens when elected officials get involved with vendors and with developers. Nobody on council does any negotiating, not anymore. We don't jump up and drive snowplows either. This year, you can elect a mayor who knows the town's history because I've lived it. I was born here, my friends and I watched side launches. Together, you and I shared Collingwood's stories on morning radio for 11 years. And I'm still at the rink with your kids, and your grandkids. You can also elect somebody who chose Collingwood as their forever home, just like hundreds of us have done every year. During my 10 years as a journalist in Toronto, I spoke to 1 million people a day on 680 News and CHFI. I asked the hard questions of decision makers, and I followed up to get real answers. I brought that same thoroughness to the council table the last 4 years. I don't make empty promises about every amenity opening tomorrow with a ribbon cutting, but I do promise to move along the Arts Centre and the Rec Centre project, and I promise to be the young, energetic, informed, and rational leader that you've been watching in action. It's been an honor to serve as a councillor and now as deputy mayor, as well as chair of the Conservation Authority, and I'll bring diligence and dedication to the table as head of council when you elect MacLeod as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of you, or to all of you, for the invitation to share some of our thoughts with you this afternoon. My name is Norm Sandberg, and I'm also running for mayor. I believe that Collingwood is at a crossroad. We will almost double our population in less than 25 years. We're already seeing the pressures, but also the opportunities that growth will bring. But we must have leadership that understands the municipal sector very well and how to lead a very diverse group of people to embrace diverse decisions or diverse opinions that lead to good decision making. Over my 35-year professional career, I have demonstrated that I can bring those diverse views together for common purpose. I've shown this in my 4 terms on Collingwood Council. I've shown this in my 6 years each on the boards of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities, which are advocacy groups for the broader municipal sector, primarily to the provincial but also to the federal governments. I've spent 25 years in my professional career at a local major consulting engineering firm where I've undertaken water and wastewater projects throughout the province, from Tobermory to London to east of Ottawa. I understand the municipal sector because my entire life has been spent in it. Collingwood is going to be facing some significant challenges, though, that will need difficult decision making. Our treasurer has already identified that next year we'll be facing a 3.5% to 7.5% cost increase. The lower rate will be if we reduce services and staff, and/or increase borrowing, and/or defer major capital projects. I have the experience to bring diverse views together for this critical decision-making that we're going to be facing over the next couple of years, certainly throughout the term. I'm Norm Sandberg. I hope I'm your candidate for mayor. Thank you.
For deputy mayor, you will see 3 names on the ballot. One candidate, Jordan Fleming, has withdrawn, which brings us to Mr. Fryer.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. Your organizers should be commended for arranging this. As far as I know, this is the only other one besides the Chamber of Commerce candidate night. And it's really difficult to get to know your candidates. 2 minutes isn't an awful lot of time, but we do have a meet and greet afterwards that we can know about and maybe get to know each other some more then. So to get right to it, I'm very passionate about municipal Collingwood's affairs. And I want to still be making decisions about that. And the main reason is because most of the major decisions are multi-generational. And we need to make good decisions, and we need to still make good decisions to keep Collingwood as strong and as diversified as it is today. Over the past 40 years, I've been involved with 15 different councils. And I haven't lost my passion. I want to still stay involved and still be making the decisions that need to be made. I finished 8th in 2018, just one shy of getting on the council again. But I didn't let my passion dwell, and I stayed involved. And 3 of the things I stayed involved in were the Epcor sale transaction and the municipal water, and then taxes, or more specifically spending. In the Epcor case, I was very pleased to be able to convince council to get Epcor to correct their filing date. And other things still need to be worked on if I can get elected. Municipal water, not so much. I'm very concerned about the internal control bylaw that's had to be put in effect. Taxes and spending, same thing. I'm concerned, I've said it for some time now. I don't really understand why Collingwood's taxes are 20% higher than the Sega Beaches. To me, we should be very similar. So we're moving forward. We need to work with as I said, the deputy mayor position has the ability to be on county, and that's a very, very important thing. And then I do want to get into the 2023 Collingwood budget as soon as possible when we get elected. So again, looking for your support, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews.
Good afternoon, and it's nice to be back here. I've been here plenty of times with Cam and some of the key members that are wonderful volunteers in our community. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. My name is Bob Madigan, and as Mr. Fryer said, 2 minutes is not long enough for you to get to know any of us, but I am running for deputy mayor. I have 5 points that I'm going to try to share very briefly. Number 1, it's very important that we shape Collingwood for the future, all while improving the quality of lifestyle for our residents. Safety, which you all know is very imperative in this community, and we must ensure responsible growth so that doesn't affect the lifestyle that we've all come to enjoy here on the waterfront. We have to work with staff on efficiencies and accountability. I'm sure the answers are there, but the communication isn't. I'm sure we've all felt left out when we've emailed staff and not gotten a proper response back to us. I know I have as a councillor. Much like my opponent, Tim and I both have passion for this community, and I can't say that mine is any different than his. We're both born and raised here, and we owe everything to this community. But the only difference for me is that I've been running successful businesses in this community since 1995. Why does that matter, you ask? Because I believe in our town so much that I've invested in it. I have employed people, and through many day-to-day interactions over the years with the people, I feel that I have the intimate knowledge of what's important to not only the people that choose to live here, but the people that were born and raised here. There's a few of us up here. I like to call them new locals and old locals, but the key word is locals. We're all locals now. If you played for the Boston Bruins for 20 years, you get traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a very sad day for you, but that day you were a Toronto Maple Leaf. As deputy mayor, I look forward to a valuable seat at county council that I may be an asset for Collingwood, us, not the county. And that will ensure me to implementation of very important green initiatives. No more pay to play. We want parks in every little community that we can. Communication and information. This is a complex question that doesn't have an easy answer. But I believe with the proper avenue to achieve this messaging, our residents will never feel left out or out in the dark. As a steward of Collingwood's assets, my mission is simply to focus on
I have to cut you off.
quality of life, efficiencies in planning, and open channels of communication.
The councillor roster, Mr. Baines unfortunately was unable to attend, so that leaves Mr. Bergman.
You could have given me 5 seconds of Mr. Baines's. In the last election, Mr. Baines gave me at least least 30 seconds of his speech.
Hi, I'm Steve Berman. I'm on the current council, and I want to watch Colin's hand because this is my speech, so I don't think you're going to have to raise it. I'm not going to make any promises or predictions on what I'm going to do if you want me back in office, because we all know it takes 5 votes to get anything done. So what I'm going to promise you doesn't matter. I have to get the support of my colleagues, staff, lawyers, so on and so forth to get anything done. The points that I wanted to make, and Colin addressed the town's website and the information that's available on it. This information that I want you guys to know, that the job of being a counselor is all on the town website. This term we have attended over 250 meetings, council and committee meetings. We've read over 10,000 pages of agendas and reports to prepare for these meetings. We've raised our hands over 6,000 times to vote. Also on the town website, you will find, and I've got them here if anybody wants to look after, you'll find 10-year spreadsheets on our debt, which has gone like that consistently for 10 years, on our reserve and reserve funds, which have gone like that consistently for 10 years, and on our net financial position, which has also gone like that consistently for 10 years. Not politics, it's on the town website from the town's treasurer. I love doing the work. If you want me to do it for 4 more years, I'm volunteering, and if you don't, no hard feelings.
Thank you. My name is Ian Chadwick. It's really good to see so many people coming out here today, because you're here for the same reasons I'm running for council, because you care. I believe Collingwood can and should do better, and I want to help. Some of you know me from my past in the local media. I was there for about a dozen years. Some of you know me from previous terms I was on council, for the years that I spent running a successful business in town. If you want to know more about me and more about where I stand on things, please visit my website, chadwickforcouncil.ca. But what I wanted to bring up today are 2 things that, as far as I know, most people in condos and in the private areas in town want to talk about. Security gates and short-term accommodations. I think this is important to everybody here. Security gates, it's your property, it's a private road. If you can convince emergency services that they have appropriate access, I don't see why we shouldn't allow it. It's your land. You should have the same right that any property owner in town has to put a fence around their property and keep people out. Short-term accommodations, a little bit more problematic. I think we should look at what the town of Blue Mountains has done in terms of licensing. It provides enforcement, it provides control, safety, and responsibility for those things. We have to modify their model for Collingwood, but I think we can do it. But I would like to add something. I would like to add a panel system similar to Committee of Adjustment, where somebody who wants to apply for an application has to go before a panel. They have to inform all the neighbors that they're doing this, and the neighbors have the right to come forward and present their concerns or their support for that application, so that you have a chance to say something about having a short-term accommodation in your neighborhood or right beside you. Those are just a couple of things. I think we're all going to be concerned about all the same issues about taxation, housing, infrastructure. But those are the 2 things I wanted to bring up today. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Dickinson also sent his regrets to that, just to his note.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Doherty. I am a current member of Collingwood Town Council. Collingwood is growing very quickly, as we all know. It's a great place. It's no wonder people want to be here. But nearly all of us are asking the same question of ourselves. As we grow, can we continue to shape the kind of town that we envision for ourselves and for our children? The answer is yes. But we must grow smartly, sustainably, protecting our small town feel and the natural features that we love and need, and by creating attainable living for everyone. Our new official plan will assist in a Made in Collingwood roadmap to ensure that we are creating new opportunities for many different types and sizes of housing for rent and for ownership, while designing quality neighborhoods that are livable, complete, and safe. We have to grow with a commitment to our declaration of a climate crisis, because make no mistake, climate crisis costs all of us in real dollars. And witness the shoreline damage that we experienced at Sunset Point and at Millennium Park, and the flooding that some of our residents have experienced just in the last couple of years. I want to see all of our most significant capital projects go forward. The terminals redevelopment, the water treatment plant expansion, the Harborview Water Play Park, and material advancement, even completion of an all-arts facility and a multi-use recreation facility. Finally, although it's not precisely in our jurisdiction, I want to see material advancement toward the development of a new hospital for our residents here in this community. I'm running so that we can grow.
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to pick you off there.
Thank you.
Mr. Eccleston.
Well, thank you all for coming. This is off or off? It's on? Everybody can hear me? I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Toronto and went to Toronto, North Toronto Collegiate. And I was on the 6-year program to play senior football for another year. So that's what people did in those days. After that, I went to the University of Western Ontario, graduating in business and economics. And when I went to Western, that was 10 cents a beer at the Six Hotel. So how things have changed. Tim Farmer probably know about that too. Tim went to Western. I've just spent about 50 years in business, mostly in the business forms industry, and always in leadership roles. The business took me to Montreal, Edmonton, and back to Toronto. In 2000, we moved to Collingwood to be with our friends, Jewelers, Peters, and whatever. And I became a financial planner, working with Investment Planning Council, looking after the investments of about 120 families. And that business was sold in 2015. On the political front, I have 7 years of experience in politics, 3 years as the mayor of Lutterworth Township in Halbert, including Minden. In my 3 years, we were able to keep the taxes at 0, 0, and -1. And they had been running out of control at 10 to 13% per year. So we introduced cost just to all the department heads, just a basic, they had to go from 0, so 0 based financial planning. Also served the Collingwood Council from 2014 to 2018, the time of the tradition of Barber. And I did a lot of work on youth homelessness, and ending up with the 10-bedroom house at 53 Campbell Street. Now we're in my own horizon, and they're doing a really good job.
I'm happy
it's
to
perfect.
have to cut you off there. Mr. Houston, I believe you're next.
Thank you everybody for coming out. My name is Brandon Houston. I moved to Collingwood in 2015, so I'm not born and raised here, but I did quickly fall in love with this community. I come now with about almost 2 decades of business experience, where I've built and operated several businesses during my time, including one that I helped to save when I did move to this community here. to me, we're facing some challenges in Collingwood that we need to fix. And I think the experience that I have on the business side brings some of those skills to help fix some of the problems that we're experiencing here. Housing and growth are, I think, two of the biggest ones that we're all probably concerned about over the next little while. It's an area that I'm heavily focused on, and an area that I think I can contribute with some of the experience that I have. I've sat on a variety of task forces and committees on economic development, including one over the last 2 years that was focused on helping small businesses in this community save and recover throughout the pandemic. That's where I've focused most of my attention on for the last 2 years. I'm not a politician, but I'm a community builder. And you can see that if you come downtown to my office, where we've built a space that is home to over 170 small business owners that work together, that collaborate, and that support each other. And to me, I think that's the biggest asset that I can bring to council, is that community building. And that's why I want to run for council.
Ms. Jeffrey.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for taking your time. My two priorities this afternoon, number one, is to hear from you and hear your questions and what you'd like to know of us, and then number two, obviously, to ask for your vote. So I have my brochure, I've circulated it. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the information, or any of the information that's in there. It's available for you. But the biggest question we have is why, and as a fourth-term councillor in my 15th year of serving the great people of Collingwood, I want to keep us moving forward in the best possible version of the community's vision. And so one of the things I'll be looking for at the very beginning is another community-based strategic plan to build in some of the new priorities that have come to our attention and to have them weigh in within our plans, master recreational, the waterfront, and all the other priorities we have on the go. I am a legal secretary by education. I'm a trained staff accountant and audit technician, so the financial information is of great interest to me. And one of the great things, I think one of my colleagues has already explained to you, is our success in improving our financial position, and I'm most proud of that. And one of those would be that the point of the debt going down is when we started 8 years ago, 13 to 16 cents of every of your tax dollars was servicing debt, and we're down to 7 cents per dollar. 9 cents per dollar on a $100 million project is a lot of leeway and other priorities that we can address. So why I can lead by example, I bring work ethic, I bring commitment, I listen to all, and I think that the experience with the 4 terms of council and my commitment, which is obvious, and I'm so proud of the success we've had in the previous terms of council, so please vote for Kathy Jeffrey. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Steve Johns, and I'm pleased to be joining all of you at today's All Candidates meeting. And I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. And I want to thank the board of directors, Colin, Cameron, for hosting and organizing what I'm sure is going to be a most interesting, interactive, and informative session. And I'm particularly looking forward to hearing your thoughts and perspectives and being educated in the process. Why have I decided to run? Well, I view this election as an opportunity to make a positive and substantive contribution to the town I now proudly call home. Given my relevant background, skill set, and experience, and the strong encouragement received from many local sources, and of course my family, I'm also confident in my ability to deliver with passion, high energy, and a high level of energy, enthusiasm, fresh perspective, constructive input, and persuasive and representative advocacy. Well, I'd be pleased to elaborate on the highlights of my 40-plus professional year career. Suffice to say that I've served as an executive assistant to 2 members of the City of Toronto and Metro Councils between 1981 and 1980, spanning the better part of 3 terms. I was also the president of an industry association between 1991 and 2002. I've held senior positions in 2 small businesses and have recently retired following a 15-and-a-half career at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, where I served as Senior Director of Corporate Member and Association Relations. In terms of priorities, I'll tell many of my priorities, by the way, are noted on my website. I've left information cards as well here. They are, when I say many, they are but few of a number of priorities, and the list keeps mounting as I keep hearing from you people. So again, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and a part of today's session. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm one of 3 Steves. The difference is my last name's Perry. I'm not currently a member of council, but I will tell you a little bit about myself. I'm currently married to that wonderful lady over there. I'm the father of 4 amazing kids and 2 truly amazing grandchildren. I've lived in Collingwood for the past 10 years, but I've been coming up here for the past 50. Basically since I was 10. My passions are obviously for Collingwood, but they run a little deeper into the trail system, and I come by that very honestly because I don't know if anyone of you know George Christie, but he happens to be my father-in-law, so I've earned that passion for trails very honestly. I've also been a small business owner. Through that business, I worked extensively with municipalities across Canada and basically the southern U.S., running filmmaking camps for children. So I've dealt with Parks and Recs departments basically across Canada or North America, you could say. Through that, I've learned the importance of teamwork. Teamwork to me is essential in getting things done. Council is a team, and they need to function that way to get projects done. I'm currently employed by a small business in town. I understand the importance of small businesses to Collingwood, and I understand the challenges that come with that. Small business is truly important to Collingwood, but I would like to see some larger businesses. 30 seconds, correct? Thanks very much for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Fox is right on the mic.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see everybody out, and good to see how much you guys care about the community. Just as much as why I'm running, I care about my community. My name is Chris Potts. I'm born and raised in the town of Collingwood, currently raising 3 kids. My wife and I, we have a daughter in grade 11, a daughter in grade 9, and a son in grade 7. We've called Collingwood home from day 1, and we'll continue to call Collingwood home forever. My past experience, I'm a recent employee of the town of Collingwood, just shy of 13 years. I work directly on the infrastructure. So the core infrastructure is sewer, water, roads. Under the roads department, we looked after winter operations along with tree, sidewalk, paving, all that kind of, under that umbrella. I bring a core experience internally. I was the vice president of our union, so I represented the outside workers both for the town of Collingwood and the Clearview Township. And along with that, I was the health and safety rep townwide, and I worked on the ergonomics committee that worked hand in hand with the Ministry of Labor. On my social life, I spent 7 years, actually a total of 9 years as a minor hockey executive member, and I spent the last 2 years as the president of minor hockey, which I led minor hockey through the Indigenous logo from the Blackhawks to the Collingwood Blues, and I also led, and one of the hardest things I ever had to do was lead hockey through the COVID and follow proper protocols. You'll notice I was recognized through CBC Ontario Morning for leading a team through minor hockey and following all the proper protocols to get the kids back on the ice. Why I'm running is I have such a passion for Collingwood and understanding the challenges every day of raising a family here in Collingwood, and also understanding the challenges of just day to day. I think I can bring a lot to the table in a smart perspective. So I ask for your support on October 24th. Thank you.
Mr. Ring.
Good afternoon. Start over, right? Good afternoon. My name is Rob Ring. It's my pleasure to spend time with you today. Hopefully you will leave here feeling good about supporting me on October 24th. My wife Liz and I have raised 3 children, Krista, Robert Jr., and Douglas, as well as 5 fabulous grandchildren. I was born at the Collingwood General Marine Hospital, and I've never lived anywhere except Collingwood. This is a claim I proudly share wherever I travel. Over the next term of council, tough decisions are going to have to be made, and strong people need to be part of the decision-making process. My hands-on approach is evident by proudly being a recipient of the Order of Collingwood, along with my induction as a builder into the Collingwood Sports Hall of Fame. And I just retired after a 24-year tenure on the Ontario Minor Hockey Association, of which I have the distinction of being the longest-serving president. Those who know me will attest I'm a leader, not a follower. That doesn't mean I can't work well within a team environment, because informed opinions, healthy discussion, and positive debate are very important when making a decision. Having said that, council needs a common sense approach of which they strive to achieve. I strongly believe in democracy, and regardless of how I vote on a motion, once it's passed or defeated, I'll support the decision of the majority. As mentioned, difficult decisions are inevitable for the next council. We will need to be more open-minded at times, think outside the box for answers. That doesn't mean we make change just for the sake of making change. If affordable change makes sense, and by using common sense approach, council should be able to achieve it. We shouldn't always have the attitude of, this is the way we've always done it. Thank you for your consideration. I'm confident if you support me, you won't be disappointed. Thank you.
If you hang on, thank you all for introducing yourselves. We can now move on to some questions. Candidates, please keep your answers as brief as possible to allow for the greatest number of questions. For the first question, we will start in reverse order with Mr. Ring. So I'm going to run through, regardless of whether you're a mayoral or a deputy mayoral candidate, we're going to run through reverse alphabetical order, and then the next question will run through the other way, just to be as unbiased as possible. Property owners at Lighthouse Point pay for all the amenities, grounds, maintenance, security, etc. through condo fees. We also pay for our own garbage collection and road maintenance, yet still pay substantial municipal taxes which are not area rated. Public access to our property is no different than having uninvited people using an individual homeowner's property. Question number 1, what is your position on permitting local condo corporations to utilize automated security gates to deter general access to their private properties? Mr. Ray.
Thank you very much. Would you like to stand for these?
Yes.
Whatever you want. This question was posed to me through an email, I'm sure we all got, and at the time, not knowing the reasons why, and in particular, still not knowing exactly why the decisions were made that they are. I didn't give a yes or a no answer, but what I will say is, as I think that Mr. Chadwick had alluded to earlier, this is private property. Consideration should be made or given to the fact that that is true. Rupert's Landing has been grandfathered their right to have security gates. I'm not saying whether it will come to pass, but I would say that I'd be open to listen to, and if there's reasons why it should be that way, I would certainly support it. At this time, I would have to hear both sides of the story. I always try to take the due diligent course where where I want to hear the reasons why for or against it. And having said that, I could support it, but I would need to know exactly the reasons why it was turned down in the past. Thank you.
So in regards to security gates, I also submitted a response back to that email. And going many years ago, when I first started into the workforce, condo corporations was kind of one of the areas where I did work and focused on. And I understand the importance of the garbage collection and the property itself, the waterfront. I understand the property taxes, the condo fees. And in my response, I put that I would be in support of gates or in coming up with a solution. Right away, when you say no, that means we're not open for business or open for suggestions. And I really think that you guys deserve an opportunity. Again, we revisit this, and I would be in support of working on a solution from both sides to ultimately end up maybe one day with security gates. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
I did respond to the email and the questionnaire. I haven't committed one way or another. One of the, for lack of a better term, selling points of myself is I'm basically like a sponge. I don't have any preset ideas as far as what prior council has done and what you as a community want. So that's why I'm here today. I want you to tell me the reasons why you want gates. I will tell you, my mother lived in a gated community in Brampton, and it was fantastic. It was a super place for her to live. I couldn't pick a better place for her to live. But I'm not going to commit one way or another. That's why I'm here. So after the meeting, if we can talk, I've got all the time in the world.
I'm afraid I have to fall on my own sword here. I should have had Mr. Sandberg speak first, so if I can insert you now, and I'll correct it on the next round.
Thanks so much. So I've been reached out to by 3 or 4 of you on this very topic, and my response has been pretty consistent. And that is, there are 4 fire chiefs now that have expressed concerns about gates for safety and quickness of access under emergency conditions. So my response has been to support the fire chief, who is the expert in this situation. However, at least 2 of you have sent alternatives for access to me. So if I'm elected as mayor, then I will certainly share that with the fire chief. And if the fire chief is supportive of gates under whatever the technology is that's available, then I will certainly support the fire chief's decision.
Thank you. Ms. McLeod.
Thanks so much. And I was in a meeting of the Emergency Management Committee on Thursday morning at the fire hall, and actually the fire chief approached me because he knew I was coming to see you guys today. Oh, who was that? He wanted to have a conversation about it too, and wanted to be sure that everybody knew where he still stands on it, and that is that he's not yet convinced. That doesn't mean that he is unconvincible, and it doesn't mean that I am unconvincible. But one of our jobs sitting on council is to listen to the experts. So our staff goes out, finds the best practices from all across the province, and indeed sometimes across the country, brings that information to us, and we make decisions based on that expert opinion and the best practices. And so right now I'm standing with the fire chief. However, that being said, if he can be convinced, I can be convinced. Let's work together to find a solution that works for everybody.
Hero. I make this really easy. I go to the fire chief all the time, and although I beat him at golf, I beat him in this too. Absolutely. It's your property. It's your gate. I've been working on this with Ken and some people on the board. I only have one preface that I would ask that the people of this great community will abide to, that if the gate does not go up and the fire truck has to break through it, that the wonderful people of Lighthouse Point will fix the fire truck. I don't want people playing in my backyard, and you don't want people playing in your backyard. It's a simple answer, so thank you.
Yeah, I guess a lot of what's already been said, I would echo. While I have not yet landed on a defined position on the issue, I do clearly recognize the importance of private property protection, privacy, access privileges for owners, residents. There are undeniable rights. That noted, I do have some concerns based on the fire chief's previous commentary around emergency access. And it's not only fire, it's health, it's other safety considerations. These are vitally important as well. So a bit of a balancing act going on here. I do look forward to being further educated from you folks. And the one thing as well that I'm prepared to do, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, is push for an early reopening of the discussion and consideration on this particular file, because it has to be resolved.
Ms. Chair.
Thank you very much, and I agree that most of it has been said, and as a member of current council for and a lot of other years, the fire chief's opinion has always weighed heavily. I do know in one of our more recent reviews of the gated community matter with Mariner Haven that technology is evolving, and I think that if our current fire chief is willing to look at that and to bring it forward with council with a new recommendation, I'd be quite pleased to support it. And I do think technology is getting close. It's just the access of our emergency services, and we have to be conscious of our liability and keeping everybody safe. So I just empower the people and keep coming and ask us, and I think it will be there on our first agenda in the first quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houston.
So in principle, I'm not in support of gates, and it's not because I don't think you should have the right to decide who should and shouldn't be on your property. It's because I think the message that can send is that we're not all part of the same community. And to me, that is incredibly important. However, I don't think I have all of the information. I don't think I have the ability to make the decision right now. But what I am open to is having the conversation. And I think having the conversation is more important than saying yes or no right now.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond.
As you know, this matter came before council during COVID because of all the problems she had with the community. And I believe it was before council in 2015. And we haven't been successful so far. I think that this is, for myself, I am not committed to a rule being a rule being a rule. I think we have to always look at the circumstances. I know I was motivated by several factors 2 years ago when we voted. Certainly the fire chief's opinion was one that weighed heavily on me. But I would like to say, I also think with every issue, we need to consult with those who are impacted. And I know if for whatever reason gates aren't to be recommended for your community, that perhaps we can achieve some of the things that are bothering you by some discussion and action. And I'll just give you one example, which might be if you're having a problem with illegal parking, can we get town enforcement staff in here on a regular basis to deal with that? I think if we can deal with the short-term accommodation issue, would that eliminate some of the unknown faces that you see continually in the recreation center and so on? I think it's not necessarily an easy answer, and I'm definitely willing to sit down with whatever group you might put together and see what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer.
Any bylaw of the town of Collingwood can be revisited, and it's up to input from the public. Sometimes it's input from council. I have every expectation, as Councillor Jeffrey already mentioned, that this will come to the table in the first quarter. Either you'll bring it or whoever's successful will bring it forward. So because I'll, to be quite transparent, in 2015, I was in support of not having gated communities. But I do not deny for a second that I can't be better educated. And I'm willing to listen to it and see if there's reasons why it must work in other areas, because we know there's gated communities in other areas. So, as I'm saying, anything can be revisited. This will be revisited in the near future, and I'll be supporting whatever our staff are bringing forward in review and with communication with the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I've been about face on this issue. I've been in extensive conversations with David Cotton. I think David's superintendent, one of the other condo associations. And the first weekend in August, I had the situation, we were invited to a birthday party at Lighthouse Point, and there were two sets of interlopers there on blankets with kids, and they were not residents, and I think that's wrong. So I have completely changed my mind. I would allow gates to be put in. Assuming the Yelp, I think it's called the Yelp. Does anybody know?
It is. It is.
It's called the Yelp, and that would be supplied to the fire department or first responders, I assume?
Yep.
And then it works, and if it doesn't work, then they're gonna take down the gate, the fire chief will be responsible, I guess, and you guys will be responsible for repairing it, I guess, so. Anyway, I would vote for a gate.
Thank you. As you know, gated communities or gates have not been permitted since 2010. And as has already been alluded to, our emergency personnel are not in support at the moment. However, I am well aware, as it has been mentioned, that there are new technologies available now to overcome the issue of access for emergency personnel. So ultimately, I think it's important that I, as a councillor, have an open mind and listen to an open discussion. And I look forward to yourselves, or perhaps it will be brought forward by council in the new term, and we'll have a fulsome discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. I think I've already said it. You should have the same rights as every other property owner in Collingwood. You should have the same rights as any commercial property, which can already put up security gates to your land. Why can't you do it? And we all know this, that technology is already being used all over the province that would allow emergency services to lift the gate automatically. And we've all got mobile phones. If you've got somebody in the gate, they can call. Or they have a caretaker, they can call and have the gate moved pretty quickly because the fire station's a couple of minutes away. I think you should have the right. And we should amend bylaw from 2010. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably the easiest thing to do when you're trying to get elected is to tell people exactly what they want to hear, but that's not why I got into politics. I'd like to give kudos to Brandon for all the news he got for being honest in his answer. As I said earlier, on this current council, we voted over 6,000 times. I got the same email that everybody else got, and I responded to the gentleman pretty much with what people have said around the table, which is that I don't deal in hypotheticals. It would take 5 votes to get this bylaw, as Tim said, back in front of council. Then we would get a staff opinion, a legal opinion, the emergency services opinion. We'd look at all that information, and then we'd make a vote. So I can't hypothesize on how I feel. I don't have the information in front of me. But send the email out is that we do vote that many times over the course of the term, and if you base your vote on one thing, you better think about the way I could vote wrong on the other 5,999 items. So I hope this is just part of a bigger picture. I can't promise anything. I don't have the information in front of me, and I'll pass it on to whoever's next. Oh, the answer is well, then what's the next question?
As noted, we pay for services which would be provided by the town to freehold residential properties. Yet we are taxed at 1.3 times the rate of those properties. Do you consider this fair? And if not, how do you propose to remedy this?
This is to me. If I had the remedy for taxation, I'd probably be accepting my Nobel Prize right now for economics. I really, I look at somebody like Tim, but I would look to the treasurer, and I don't have the financial figures. I don't know that the tax rate is what you're being taxed at here compared to what I'm being taxed at home, but everything's open to be looked at. Again, I don't want to stand up here and answer a question I'm not qualified to answer that I haven't researched. If that's the case, then it needs to be looked at with the next council.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
I was on the council that took this issue to the county and tried to get their taxes reduced for the garbage pickup, because the county takes care of all the garbage pickup. And the county basically said no. As there's not much we can do except have our county representatives, whoever you elect as mayor and deputy mayor, to bring that forward again and say, look, it's not fair that we're charging people on the tax rates for that. For other things, common uses services like roads, parks, and that kind of thing, we're all taxed at the same rate. For the rest of it, if you have to make a delegation, bring it to council, tell us exactly what the differences are and why. You have to make a delegation, tell us why they should be reduced. I agree, you're taxed more. I understand you're going to be taxed more for being on the waterfront than I am, say, being in the middle of town. But there's some things, especially like the garbage pickup and the snowplow, that you shouldn't be taxed for. Sorry, you shouldn't be taxed for the same things that I'm being taxed for on my street. And that's all I got to say about that.
I'm sorry, I missed the word.
I got it memorized by now. In terms of the tax rate, all residential properties, regardless of where they are taxed at the same rate. So the actual value of your taxation is based on your assessment and not on the tax rate. But this question has been brought to us several times, and I did actually direct it to our treasurer to try to get a better understanding of how it works with services like waste removal and snow removal in condominium properties. And how it was explained to me is condominium properties are actually assessed on a comparative basis slightly less than an equivalent property that is not in a condominium development. And the reason why is because your roads and your services are supplied privately, and they have been developed privately, and they have not been developed at the expense of the town. And that reflects on the value of your individual properties. In terms of your garbage pickup, it is correct. The county does remove your garbage. However, you can, as a condominium corporation, apply to the county for a rebate on your waste removal services. So, and I would be happy to have a sidebar discussion with the members of the board of the condominium corporations and direct you to the right people to speak to, but that you are entitled to that. In terms of snow removal, the snow removal cost is assessed equally across all properties in the community, regardless of whether they are single family, townhome, apartment, condominium. It's assessed townwide. there's no differentiation made based on your location. And that's my answer.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholson.
Thank you. All I can advise is that you make a presentation to the new council, and we take it up in consideration, and you'll make some good points, I'm sure, and we'll listen.
In 2024, there will be a very complex change in taxation. The current value market assessment way that they use, or that they update every 5 years, has been delayed for 3 years. So I very much anticipate council going through an extensive review of taxation in 2023 in preparation for the change in 2024. So factors like you've talked about have to be taken into consideration. It's going to be presented in the public sphere. That gives you an opportunity to speak. It's really important that you help us along that way, because it's going to be a very significant change. What Collingwood's gone through in the last 8 years, and now we're going to update the property values. It doesn't mean your taxes are going to triple, but the property values are probably 2 and 2.5 more than they've been. It's all relative, because if everybody's went up 2.5, then the mill rate would just come down 2.5. But there'll be more work necessary to try to make it as fair across the board as possible. Municipal taxation is very difficult to make fair, because it's based on value of homes. It doesn't take into account if somebody has a mortgage or not. In any event, I do expect that next year there'll be extensive work on taxation for the year after. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hammond.
I do agree that with Councillor Doherty mentioned that the tax rates are the same, but your values are different. And but the issues that you are paying more in taxes and providing your own services for some of the things that you're also paying taxes for is an issue that condominium owners across the province have been complaining about for the 50 years condominiums have been in existence. I have to say, I honestly thought that this was an issue for the province to take charge of by amending the legislation that affects it. I didn't really, and I stand to be corrected, but I had really thought that municipalities don't have the right to tinker with this. But I would like to suggest that if a deputation is made to the new council, we can ask our staff to look into it and report back on what the latest and greatest is on this issue, and then we can make a decision going from there. And that's what I recommend that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houston.
As already has been mentioned, there's some stuff on the county level that is simply out of our control. However, we do have a representative on council on the county level. So I think what they can be is the voice there to express those concerns and have those conversations and push that forward. For everything else, I think it's fair to say, let's look at a service by service basis of what we're paying for and what we're not using and reviewing. So I think in response to that, as also has been mentioned, is bringing that to council, the next council, and having that conversation, and then town staff can start to do that work. That's simply stuff that we can't do as council. We need staff to bring those numbers forward to us, and then we can have that conversation back with you.
Thank you. Ms. Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'm saddened in one way that we had to wait to an election to bring this to our attention to talk about it and seek about something going forward. Because we have worked so hard at getting our committee meetings accessible to all of you to come on one Monday a month to come and say to us, we're having trouble with the fairness or what we appear to be unfair in terms of our taxation. And that would have been a perfect question to go to corporate what are you naming again, Mary? Corporate Communications Committee at any time. So, and with that said, then I'm glad that you are here and asking it, and it's something that any council member would not have all of the information on hand. But if it's a matter of fairness, I think we need to get to it straight away. My understanding over my terms of council, when I spoke with the various treasurers, was that it had been handled through the county, particularly with respect to the garbage. But I think we do have to take a serious look, and if there is a problem with the fairness and how that's rolling out, whether or not we have the capability, if Councillor Hamlin is correct, then we need to hammer that out as well. But we need to educate ourselves on what we can do and what we should do. And I know all of the councils have all been about fairness to our residents and our taxpayers. So I look forward to hearing from you in the future and being able to tackle that. And I'm sorry that you waited for the election to go. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Yeah, I really don't have anything much further to add. I think the argument's been laid out quite succinctly, especially by Councillor Doherty, Mr. Fryer, and others. At the heart of this is, in fact, tax fairness and equity. And you brought up an interesting point, and I think it deserves merits early priority consideration at the new council. And again, I'd be more than happy to push that. I think all of us would be.
Thank you, Mr. May.
Once again, I will get up here and give you answers I think you want to hear. If anybody knows me, that's not me at all. I get myself in trouble many a time. We all pay too much taxes, all of us. It's ridiculous. I went from a 5,600 square foot with a huge 50-foot pool to a half-size property, and I pay more taxes because I'm near the water. So, as I said, as deputy mayor, I'm going to county to advocate for us. We probably have the most condo boards within the county. I'm not there to make friends with our lovely people from our other communities. I work for the town of Collingwood. I work for you. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear if I can't do it. But just like anything, if you're walking your children in the forest and a bear comes up, you're going to fight that bear even though you're going to lose to save your children. I'm going to fight no matter what. I'm not going to sit there and say that taxes are complicated. Taxes are complicated for everybody. But if we want to change it, it starts today. And it has to start with a conversation. And I'm sure that everybody else will go around it. We live here in this community because this is the place where people want to live. This is also the place that Ontario made a growth node. So it's pushing people here, which are raising everything. They're raising house prices. We have to fight today. So I'm not here to give you the answer that you want. This is what I believe. I, Bob Madigan, pay way too much taxes in the town of Collingwood. Way too much. I used to pay $18,000 for owning a building downtown for nothing. We pay too much. It starts today.
Well, first of all, I'm really happy to hear that the treasurer is giving the same answers to Councillors Doherty and I on these issues. I've been speaking with her about that, and I was speaking with the previous treasurer as well, and she also gave me the same answer, and that is that you do have the right as a condo corporation to apply to the county. I hope that you have to get a rebate on the portion of county taxes that goes to garbage removal and the work that the county does. So maybe not every condo corporation knows that, but I'm suspecting that you guys do, because you seem like a pretty bright group. I want to thank actually the gentleman that I was speaking with before the meeting for giving me a bit of an education on this issue. And I also want to say that I saw many eyes go like this when Tim said that your impact assessment is going up 2.5 times. Please, you're not going to be paying 2.5 times in taxes. That's not how it works. It's not the HST. You will remain around the same number of dollars. It just gets adjusted. So don't worry about that one as much. But yeah, I am happy to hear more about this. And as mayor, I'll be attending county on your behalf. And definitely there's going to be a big conversation about this in 2024 when impact catches up after COVID. And that's the opportunity for us to have a real impact on these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Perry.
I'm not gonna stand up here and pretend I'm a tax expert, because I'm not. As previous councilors have spoken before, you should go to the county, as a group. Find somebody to advocate for you within this group. I certainly don't agree with if you feel your taxes are being paid more than what our rate is. I still feel my taxes, like Bob said, are too much in town. I'm all for tax fairness across the board. I do want to say, and I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but everyone in this room's garbage goes to the same place. Like it or not. There, I said it. And
We know that's how it gets there.
exactly, and I fully agree with you. I fully agree. It's how it gets there. But it does end up in the same place. I'm not saying your tax rate, on garbage should be the same. Perhaps a discount on it, but that's out of my hands, and I'm not gonna say I can do anything about it because I can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Potts.
Well, like I mentioned before, being born and raised here in Collingwood, I've been here for 39.5 years, and I've watched taxes go up significantly in my time. And raising a family here, do I want taxes to go up? Absolutely not. And being in my previous employment, understanding what services that we provided with snow removal and garbage and everything, and knowing that wasn't part of the condo corporations, I do have a clear understanding that there should be some sort of review in that perspective. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not an expert in the tax areas, just getting going, but I'm certainly open for, when being elected, for a deputation and an open conversation. And I know over the next month, I've got some homework to do to educate myself better. So to be honest with you, that's something that I will start doing my homework on. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There's not much more I can add, because I think pretty well everything's been touched on that you want to hear, and the only thing I can say is repeat some of this stuff, and not which would be, is if you're entitled to a rebate from the county, I would suggest that you just do apply for it. As for the, anything that the town council has any authority on taxation, again, the best thing to do would be send deputation to council, and I think it's something that should be done if there is the unfairness anywhere in the town of Collingwood. I suggest that you bring that forward, and I certainly would be to listen to anything you have to say, and if there's anything we can do, I would be all for it. I can't promise you anything, because it's been mentioned by numerous people up here, and I'm certainly not a tax expert, as Chris just alluded to. I'm going to have to educate myself once on council, or hopefully prior to getting on council, to make sure that I know I can make a difference when it comes to taxation, regardless of whether it's my taxes, your taxes, or anybody else that lives within the town of Collingwood.
Thank you, Mr. Sandberg. I think I've got it just tackling the correct order.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is not a new question from you as a group, and I suspect from many of you as residents of Lighthouse and the other condominium corporations. In my previous terms in council, we have tried to address some of your concerns. I was speaking with Frank, I think it was earlier. One thing we did do, recognizing inequity, was to remove something as simple, it's only a few dollars, but something as simple as fire hydrant service from the tax roll, and did it on a per hydrant basis, because it was more cost effective for you and fair in the broader sense. We also, and I think Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Doherty were on council at the same time, we went to a user fee system for water and wastewater, taking it off the tax roll to make it more specific to a usage basis as opposed to spreading it out over everybody. What I'm saying by this is, even though it's taking time, your advocacy does work. Council does listen. At least prior to my last term at the end of 2010, and I suspect the current council will be able to be listening as well. But it does take time to initiate these changes. You just keep on what you're doing and advocating for your own taxes and costs. The county, that clearly is the responsibility of whoever you elect for mayor and deputy mayor to advocate on your behalf, and the other condominium corporations within town for something as specific as the garbage.
Okay, thank you. Hang on to it. You're up first, but then the next question is, what is your position on regulating short-term accommodation?
So a little bit of the history in the bylaw, and again, I can't remember, but I think Councillor Jeffrey Doherty were on council at the same time. There was a situation that was brought to council's attention where the then Cranberry Inn was renting out condominiums as part of its hotel stock. So it was really as part of the hotel operation. And we thought that was not fair. The council of the day, it was not fair when people in a residential area had every expectation not to have that kind of commercial operation happening next door. I am not familiar with the town of Blue Mountains, a bylaw that addresses part-time or the interim Airbnb, basically rental. But I still believe that that bylaw that we did initially was the right thing to do, and that is in a residential area, other than bed and breakfast, which is a recognized and regulated home business, that we have every expectation to have our residential areas as residential areas, and this short-term accommodation is not something that is appropriate.
Just as Norm has alluded to, I too don't think that short-term rentals should be permitted within residential areas. My understanding, and Norm also alluded to, that the councils, the previous councils, tried to address this, and there is a good bylaw in place, and it does say that other than bed and breakfast, where the bed and breakfast, the proprietor of the bed and breakfast dwelling must live in the dwelling, it shouldn't be permitted in residential areas. And I agree with that. And I think we have a bylaw in place that covers that, and should, the thing that it doesn't do is get enforced. Unfortunately, I'm understanding that almost on a complaint basis, if they don't know about it, they don't do much about it. And that's not, I'm not going to say it's the fault of the bylaws department or anybody else. It's just the way it is, it seems to be right now. I would think that this new council should really take a hard, fast look at that bylaw that's already in place and just get it enforced, and I think it'll alleviate a lot of your problems.
So my past experience living in Collingwood, and I know it's not all about what my opinion is, but it's community-wide. But I lived right next door to a short-term accommodation. It was the worst 3 years of my life. It was the parking was issue. We were right in the middle of town, and it was nothing but trouble. Out canvassing the last 4 months, I've heard mixed emotions, but I feel that short-term accommodations, I'm not in favor of them. I look at if there's any area where they would be allowed, there needs to be some sort of plan in place, whether it's a permit or a licensing, and there has to be very strict things that go along with it. But in this case here, for a condo corporation, I do not think short-term accommodation should be allowed. Thanks.
Put it this way, if I lived in Lighthouse, I certainly wouldn't want to have residents beside me, a short-term rental. I attended a meeting this week the town ran on short-term rentals, and one of the ladies mentioned that she had on a Friday night The truck pulled up, 6 people got out of the truck. Another truck pulled up, another 6. Long story short, in a small 1,200 square foot condo, there were 16 people in for the weekend, plus 3 dogs that were unleashed. So, I would not want that around me. The bed and breakfast is a great thing. Short-term rentals, without strict enforcement or regulation, I'm totally against.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was at that event as well last week and heard some horror stories. And but I also want to let you know that I have a friend who uses their front bedroom in their house on 7th Street as a B&B, and that's how they're paying for their kids' education. And they're paying their mortgage. So there is a place for this stuff. But they live in the house. It's not a ghost hotel, and it's these ghost hotels that are causing such a huge problem for so many people right across town, and I do not agree with that. However, we just talked about taxes, and so if we want to enforce and shut down the 300, probably 200 of them are illegal, that are available tonight in Collingwood, then your taxes are gonna really go high. So we need to find a smarter way. And what we're doing right now isn't working. The enforcement isn't working. That's what bylaw told us at this event in the community consultation. And that's what we have been hearing time and time and time again. So what do? Well, we're working on it. And so we have our staff working on that with that public consultation. We brought in the folks from Blue Mountains, and I have heard, well, the people who talked to the event talked a lot about how much success they've had, and they've actually got some of the property rental companies on board with their regulation. They want it. They sure didn't at first, and let's not forget that Blue Mountains spent millions of dollars making their regulations happen. So we need to be smart and thoughtful and listen to the advice of experts and figure this out together, and that's what we've tasked staff to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Short-term accommodations are probably one of the top 5 causes of what has made housing prices in Collingwood go up. So as I was listening, I just pulled up Airbnb Collingwood, and I can stay at a lovely guest suite in stylish downtown for $487 a night. That's cheap, so that's fantastic, but unfortunately, if they're $500 a night, every night, then they can afford to pay the mortgages that the average Joe can't pay. People move here for a lifestyle, and if we allow this to continue to happen, it's going to deter the lifestyle that we moved here for. I think I would like to see bylaw be more proactive. I am not trained in bylaw, and I just pulled it up, and I'm sure every one of you could pull it up in 3 seconds. So rather than being reactive, we have fantastic communication officers within our community. I think we have 2 or 3 now. I think they might be able to spend some time looking at their phones and just going on. We can't stop Airbnb as a company, but we can stop it within our community if the bylaw go up and we give them enough fines that $487 a night is not going to really cut it because they're going to get a $750 fine. I agree with Marion, people that live in the house, we put that in. I think they have to, you can't use more than 65% of your own. That's different. These are people just trying to get by. These could be retirees, young families. That's how they do it. But not this, not the ghost, not 487. That's a lot of money, and that affects all of us. So proactive rather than reactive. We just give them the tools and the recipe for success to better our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, the current situation with SPAs is it's untenable. It's illegal, and it needs to be addressed. I attended the public session last week around SPAs, and it was interesting. There were some different perspectives. Some comments made that were supportive of short-term accommodations in terms of related, economic benefits, etc., tourism. But there needs to be, if there were to be STAs permitted, there has to be some regulatory rigor applied We talked about licensing, we talked about zoning bylaw provisions, we talked about restricting short-term accommodations to certain locations, not so as to not be disruptive to residential neighborhoods. We actually had one, I wasn't even aware of the fact that it was operating until a couple of weeks ago. It was about 36 hours worth of fun and frolic and commotion, which reached a feverish pitch on, I believe it was a Saturday night. And finally, I think the police arrived and something ended up dying down. But at this point, it's anarchy, and that's just not appropriate or fair, and certainly not fair to residents like yourself in the condominium corporation where you've got such close proximity. I mean, I'm living in a residential development, but boy, in a condo, you've got these guys living next door. Don't have to tell you how disruptive that is. In some cases, you probably don't even know who your neighbor is because that neighbor's perhaps never set foot in the premises. Anyways, I can rattle on for a while on this particular topic, but status quo is not acceptable.
Thank you. Ms. Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. So you are in my wheelhouse now. I brought the bylaw issue to the forefront, and I know that it was in the newspaper, and I know I received a phone call about every other night in terms of people who were experiencing the horrors of the short-term accommodation. And what candidate Potts didn't mention to you, I was the council rep he called with respect to the short-term accommodation going on next door to him. And in the end, it wasn't really the bylaw. The bylaw to enforce takes pretty close to a year or more to enforce through a court process. But fortunately for him, the property next door, we were able to eradicate it with fire services and emergency with respect to a lack of attention to those requirements in that home. So my problems are the disruption with the neighborhoods, and yes, you do feel it even more in the condo corps. And I do feel we need to look at some better solutions. I think the town needs to be more aggressive. I've stated that right from the beginning. I don't understand why it had to be complaint basis and why we had to wait for neighbors to be the bad guy to tell us it was going on. And I think that we've hired 2 more people in bylaws, but it's just not enough to keep on top of the enforcement. So we do have to find some better ways to get on top of it and protect our neighborhoods, because people need to work the next day, they've got children, and I think it's not part of our community vision. So I'm glad to hear a lot more people getting on board, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to go something forward with our plans and find some kind of solution to get our neighborhoods back. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Houston.
The question was, should we be regulating short-term accommodations? And I'm not sure that that's the right question, because we already are, and it's clearly not working. I'm not against companies like Airbnb. I use it myself when I travel. However, I am against property owners that don't care about the community where they own the property, and it's just a moneymaker for them. So what I think we need to do is make sure that we have the right policies and procedures in place that do actually enforce the job. As was already shown, you can go out there and get a short-term accommodation right now, so it's clearly not working. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
You know what, this is one of the issues I feel so strongly about, so I was so glad that it was coming up during the meeting. I feel that our housing units should be used for housing. That's it. Not hotel units with no on-site management. I don't like the concept of our community being disrupted, the safety issues, and all of the other negative things that go along with having, ghost hotel units in our community. I am not a fan of what the town of Blue Mountains has done. What they've done is they've created an area around their village, and they said you can have Airbnb short-term accommodation units in there, and it's all regulated. So many people, you know, so many hours, you can only be open so many, you know, till 11 at night or whatever they are. And it's still enforced by the law enforcement people. And my son had the privilege of renting a home abutting that area about a year ago with his wife. And in visiting with him, I can tell you that it's just as hard. Like, parties are going on at midnight. There are 3 times as many people in the units as should be, and I didn't see that as a good answer. What I have been attracted to is the solution that has been advocated by a nonprofit group called Fairbnb. And we were lucky enough, or I was lucky enough, to be contacted by the gentleman who's the director of that nonprofit organization. It'll be 2 years ago in December. He moved to Collingwood, and he called me up because he knew I felt strongly about this. And he told me what their group's advocating for municipalities across the country. And it's basically no short-term accommodation. The only kind of sharing of homes is if it's your principal residence, right? So you live there, and maybe it's a room, like the example that was given in your home, and you know it's a bed and breakfast, or maybe when you go away for the weekend. But it's your home. You care about your home and the community and your neighbors. I want to suggest that you keep paying attention to this issue. Our staff, as you know, has just done a consultation with the community, and they'll be bringing a report back. And I am not convinced that I'm going to like the recommendation that comes back from our staff. So please read it, follow it. If you have something to say, write to council, come in, make your application, and so on. The last thing I'll say is that, you know, when my daughter got married a few summers ago, there weren't enough hotel units in town to accommodate even her wedding. I think there was only 100 guests, which is like a lot to tell you. But anyway, so, but since then the Holiday Inn's opened up, and council's now recently approved another hotel on the same large property where the Holiday Inn is. So I think, you know, with us providing more hotel units, and I think the one we just approved has kitchens as well. And with, you know, anyway, all to say, I won't want any more, but I'm with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
This is one of those major issues that isn't just a Collingwood issue, but it's also one that Collingwood has to deal with. So we're lucky enough to have the town of Blue Mountains going through an exercise that costs them a lot of money. And now they're doing an enforcement program that's basically working out very, very well, because it's working, I think, to the degree that it's revenue neutral. So that would mean that you wouldn't have to have tax increase. So that would be certainly something I would want to see. I had a story from one of the town Blue Mountain people that were working in the department, and they levied a fairly heavy fine, $1,500, $2,000 on a house. I won't say a home, because it was, the gentleman's response was, well, that's going to throw up your business model. Well, sorry, I think your business model should include you living in the house, because then you're conforming to the B&B regulations. So I think the other thing that I'm aware of that Town of the Mountains is doing is they're watching for advertising. There's if you advertise it in the legal short-term rental, you can be fined. So I'd like to see measures like that taken. And I was aware of the fact that it had already been brought up by this current council, and they were well aware of the fact that it was a problem, and they wanted the staff to come back to them, study the issues, get it back to them. I don't know for sure when it's supposed to come back. I was even thinking it might even be back before the end of the term. But if not, then the new council would be dealing with it. And I think the staff will have a lot of good information about what's happening currently in these other places where it's being dealt with, and hopefully we can figure out ways that we can deal with it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ecclestone.
Yes, I'm very much against short-term accommodation. I think that Airbnb, in some respects, cater to families. I don't know whether they should be exempted or not, but we need to revisit our regulations and our fines, and it's not good for our town, and we need to get the word out that Collingwood is not open to short-term accommodation, and I think we probably have to increase the fines and publicize it a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. So as has already been alluded, as short-term accommodations are not permitted in the town of Collingwood, but clearly there are hundreds of them operating. So the issue is that we can't track them, we can't enforce them, and we have a great deal of difficulty prosecuting them. Staff are also keenly aware. And we talked a lot about the impacts in terms of quiet enjoyment of property and property standards. But the other negative impact of short-term accommodations is the fact that they are reducing the number of long-term rentals that are available to people who want to live and work in our community. And that's an even more critical issue. Staff did come forward with a very fulsome report in June, which you could access to have a look at from the town website, as to what various models are, what some of our options might be. And right now there is a public consultation that is ongoing online, and you can actually engage with that survey up until the 30th of this month. So if you have a strong opinion, then I would encourage you to go on the town website, collingwood.ca, and have a look. In my personal opinion, I think that there is a potential role for short-term accommodations in owner-occupied homes. So that is people who live full-time, as has already been alluded to, maybe renting out a room, or if you go down to someplace south in the winter, that you might be able to use your accommodation for short-term rental while you're away. But there's a big difference in that kind of short-term accommodation and the pride of ownership that will prevent it from being an abuse in your neighborhood, and the whole notion of these ghost homes that are being used for nothing else but. Anyway, after the public consultation, staff will be coming forward with some recommendations, and we do look forward as a council to seeing what they will bring forward, and hopefully that will happen before the end of term, but if not, it will be addressed with the new council. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they come back with, because absolutely it's not working right now. And in fact, you know, when we go back to the whole notion of the concerns that you have as a condominium group, and the amount of trespassing and abuse potentially of your lands and resources here, if we can eliminate or strongly reduce short-term accommodation, keep it only to owners who occupy the residence or the condominium for any length of time, then maybe some of those problems will also disappear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
I've already said a bit about this, but what I didn't tell you was that I had a personal experience with short-term accommodations. The two houses on both sides of mine, within a couple of months, were both bought and turned into Airbnb places. And it took months upon months of all the neighbors, not just me, all the neighbors calling bylaw to have them come out and deal with it. It was kind of like playing whack-a-mole all the time. And eventually, the two properties, the owners gave up and turned them into long-term accommodations. So I know what the problems are. I've had to deal with them myself. But I don't think bludgeoning people with bylaw is going to work, because it's all based upon a complaint system. So you have to call bylaw, bylaw has to come out here, they have to deal with the complaint, and as you've heard, they have to go through a whole court process. If we look at the town of the Blue Mountains and use them as a starting point, we can find a way to enforce something that might work. It might work better than what we've got now, for sure. They charge $2,500 for a license. They only allow so many within the town and so many within an area. And as I said earlier, if you have a panel system whereby An applicant has to come forward in public and explain why they want it, and you have all the neighbors who've been informed, have a chance to come out and speak up for it or against it. You at least engage the community, and people get to know who's involved and what it's going to be used for. I don't know whether that's going to be the best solution, but I think I agree with everyone here. What we've got going on right now doesn't work. We have to look at a new model. I'd like to start with the town of the Blue Mountains, only because they've got something that works there. Maybe we can modify it, maybe we can take it up from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berger.
Thank you. First of all, 6-1J is top of the 8th, if anybody cares. I knew I brought these papers with me for a reason. It's just to remind me that so much happens over the course of a 4-year term of council. I'm glad to hear so many at this table went to the public sessions, and just to piggyback on something that Tim has said, it says that the council is supposed to get a report back on this by December of 2022, so it's actually on time. It'll be in front of the next council, the report. And I also want to let everybody know that we recently hired, I think she just started a couple weeks ago, a housing development coordinator who will also be looking after this file, so hopefully we're not having the same conversation in 4 years. I have a B&B, I guess it's called, next door to me. The people live there full-time, and the owners live there full-time, and I would need to know it's a B&B if people didn't talk about it. So I'm very fortunate that they live there full-time, and when the people, when they do rent the extra rooms, that they're incredibly responsible with it. I'm not in favor, for the same reason everybody said about having ghost hotels, I think is the term, because we need roofs over everybody's head. We don't need people to be buying houses as investment properties. I'm going to leave this with Cameron. This is just stuff I copied and pasted up off of the minutes of meetings from this term on anything that council's approved to do with housing. So it's better than my memory if you want to take a look at it after. It'll tell you where we are on a lot of issues.
You get round to, yes.
And I gotta go to the football scores.
Okay, thank you. Next question. And we're running short on time, so I'll ask everyone to be as brief as possible. How would you balance development with the need for public spaces, including access to the shore, green space, and the preservation of environmentally sensitive areas?
And you're lucky we go first.
That's a mic drop. I don't know a short answer to that, other than what we've been through this entire term since the interim control bylaw was passed, and we've done land use planning study. We're in the midst of the official plan review. I don't know how to answer this. We're in the midst of putting all of this stuff together to find out exactly what should go where, how much employment land we need, where's the type of employment land are we going after as far as density. Everything is currently in the works, so it would be premature to talk about the findings that will come out of that, but I would rely on all of that data, all the consultants, all the expertise, all the staff, everything to put together so that we're essentially playing risk on a map, but we have the science to back up what goes where.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tough crowd. If we all had half an hour or so to answer this question, we'd probably be able to come up with something collectively. But I don't think there's really a simple answer that anybody's going to be able to do. Municipalities don't have a lot of the tools necessary that the province hasn't given us to actually mandate a lot of things that we'd like to be able to do. One of the very few things we have is we can demand that developers put in parks and green space in the area. Now, it's limited to 5%, but perhaps we've got the tools, and I'd have to bow to the lawyers here to see if we have them, to push that so that every development has green space, a proper green space. It used to be the old practice that you take cash in lieu of green space. So, and the developers, of course, want that because they make a lot more money selling property than they do in developing parks. But if we make sure we don't take any cash in lieu, and we always make sure there's green spaces, the town has great trail system that we've expanded over the years. We have to maintain that, maybe make sure that every development has a connection to those trail spaces. Aside from that, I'm afraid I don't think I have any answers that we have in terms of the legislative sledgehammer to force developers to do things, except that we should try our very, very hardest to maintain everything we've got right now in terms of green space, and especially environmentally protected lands.
Thank you. Ms. Dolan.
Our new official plan does envision some stronger protections of our green spaces and our natural heritage. There are some in our environmental community who thinks that we can do a better job in strengthening the language in that draft official plan, and I'm very much in agreement with that. So as that evolves, which is another opportunity for public input, please make your thoughts known, and we will be bringing forward a second draft later in the month of October, and final official plan should be passed before the end of this year, if not early into 2023. At that point in time, a comprehensive zoning bylaw that comes out of an official plan and the highest standard of urban design will also address the issue of protecting our green spaces and our natural lands. All residential developments now are required as part of the planning process to provide park space, especially those of a larger size. No residential development should be permitted not to provide green space and park. And I'm also, as is Mr. Chadwick, opposed to cash in lieu of parkland, because small parks or pocket parks are just as relevant in today's issues and concerns with the environment and with climate change, and they help to create neighborhoods that are livable and have that human-centered feel. There's another note I need to myself here. Also, we are in the process of finally implementing our urban forest management plan, which was generated about 2 years ago and really hasn't gone too far of anywhere. So we will be seeing some consideration of our canopy standards. Right now, the town of Collingwood has about a 31 point some odd % of canopy coverage. But that is not as high as other municipalities that I can think of, where we comment and we admire the amount of canopy that is available, even in highly developed urban areas like Oakville and Burlington. So we can certainly challenge ourselves to do better there. A private tree bylaw, which seems to have had some pushback from some members of the public and even from staff. But the elimination or cutting down of trees on private property, and by private property I mean even residential properties, needs to be addressed. We are losing far too many trees as it is with the emerald ash borer, without having to have people removing trees on their property because they don't suit the decor or the landscape. In the city of Ottawa, who has a very, very good private tree bylaw, they permit a tree to be removed on a private property, but they will compel the homeowner to replace that tree elsewhere on the property. And if it is a very mature tree, so a very large caliber, then they may be required to replace that tree with 2 trees or even 3 trees. These are the kinds of things that we can do to protect our environment, to protect our canopy and our quality of life and our small town feel. So probably that's way too long. I apologize.
You just about to intervene, Mr. Ecclestone, please.
Actually, I think we're selling ourselves short. I think Collingwood has done a pretty good job at keeping green spaces and having the developers, if they take down a tree, they have to plant 2. And compared to other towns, I believe we're doing just fine, and we just have to keep up with the developers to ensure that they get on site for big parks and for divisions or subdivisions, and I think we're doing okay.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer.
Thank you. In preparation for my campaign, I've been following the county very closely over the last year. And I was pleased, and I was supported this if I was at county and voting as your representative. September the 13th, I think it was, they're pushing back at the province because the province was indicating that they're going to start to control green space planning and tell the county, by extension us, because the county approves our official plan, how to do the planning. And that troubled me to no small degree. I do believe very strongly that we have a good official plan. I've been studying and watching the official plans in draft still right now. I'm going to come to the table to get finalized. And that's being prepared by extensive public consultation and by using experts in a consulting role. And I believe there's a lot of good points in the official plan that we'll be able to follow as a community. And I'm very much concerned about the loss of green space. I've got a major concern about the stormwater management systems in town of Collingwood for right now and for in the future, because I don't believe we put enough investment into them. And if we remove the green space, that's a natural stormwater management system right there. So I'm going to be following the official plan, but trying to make sure that we preserve green space as much as possible with the growth that we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hammer.
I would say that historically, and probably our community is no different than many others, we didn't do a very good job of protecting our green space or access to the shoreline. We collected cash from the developers and didn't make them put parks in. But I think now these things are becoming, ingrained in us. And to me, at least, I feel like they are almost like motherhood and apple pie. And one of the reasons I pushed for a new official plan to be started in our community was we didn't have these kind of policies even in place. So as has been alluded to here, our new draft official plan is showing these kind of policies. And we have told our staff we don't want cash in lieu unless the development's really small. We want parks. I would also say that sometimes you have to ask the developers to do a little bit more. And sometimes they're willing to do it. And, and this is, I guess it was probably about a year and a half ago, a gentleman approached me. He used to be the chair of the Toronto Conservation Authority for many, many years. Not the chair, but he was the most senior staff person there, whatever that title is. And he said, gee, this particular project on the waterfront in our community, it's not built yet. Wouldn't it be great if we did this and this and that? And by the way, I've talked to the developer, he'll be coming forward. And I said, that's amazing. We talked about how it could work. And I said, but you got to get the developer and you and the staff who's responsible for this in a room. And off they went. And I know that this is coming, and you're going to see it within the next year. But here's a simple matter of someone coming forward and saying, we should do this right here. Right? And you can just make things happen. We're not so big that things don't happen here. So, anyway, thanks for raising that question, it's a great one.
Thank you, Mr. Houston.
I think we have a lot more work to do to add on to our official plan to protect the green spaces and the environment here. Development's here, it's happening, we're growing, we're going to continue to grow, and we need to make sure that developers know what's important to this community as far as protecting those resources. We need to make sure that the developers that are here are aligned with that. Otherwise, we run the risk of losing more of it. I think if we continue in that direction, if we continue to allow development at all costs, we run the risk of losing the reason why most of us move here or live here and continue to live here.
Thank you very much, and just to be brief, I would agree the official plan is our greatest opportunity. Sadly, the official plan can take up to 5 years to actually, the new one to actually get in place by the time it goes through the county and provincial approvals. So I do agree that it is apple pie and day to day for us on council. Everything goes through a lens of green space and the best that we can do for our communities, and I think we do a great job on it. And the other opportunities that council have are strategic property acquisitions in terms of trying to increase our impact for the residents. So that's my speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I think there really has to be a strong commitment to a responsible, comprehensive, sustainable, and of course, green residential development strategy and frankly, attitude that really recognizes current and future needs and demographics, but in a manner that also supports, at the same time, supports and bolsters Collingwood's core infrastructure, key assets, and certainly strength, character, heritage, and economic and job creation capability and capacity. It's a whole host of things that have to underpin of that nature that I just listed, that have to underpin our thinking, our planning, our strategizing, and it is, to some extent, to a large extent, I suppose, Councillor Hanlon's point, motherhood and apple pie, but it's real, and that kind of thinking has to be a driver.
Thank you, Ms. Madigan.
I want to thank you for making the easiest question to the end. That's awesome. I can see that the people thought it was such an easy answer to say, oh, they'll just walk through this. This one, there's no answer to it. There's absolutely no answer to this in 3 seconds when you have to think about it. I've grown up in this town, like 3 or 4 of us. I've watched green spaces disappear. I'm not going to blame the past councils, because from 1972 until now, maybe they thought they were doing, we went from an industrial town where we worked on the water and never thought we would want to recreate on it. But now we do. So the last couple councils, even the one before I sat on, we've been building more parks than we've been tearing down. But it's too late. I said in one of my 5 things is no more cash. I want more parks. We want more greenery. If we're worried about the environment, what do? You plant a tree. If you're worried about the oxygen levels, what do? You plant a tree. Climate change, you plant a tree. We can't continue to take it down. So as for access to the water, this is a huge shoreline. Once you have this benefit, people are never going to say we have enough. They always want more. But what we need to do is protect the people that live on the shoreline and give them the, I think, 32 accesses to the water that they have right now. But as for this to be wrapped up with 13 minutes left with all the candidates, there's no easy answer to this. And if any of you smart, intelligent people that have come up here have the answer, I'm happy to pay you for it and give it to the world. Because that's the only way we can do it. I don't have the answer. I don't know if we sat in here like Mr. Chadwick said and spent hours on this that we would come up with an answer. We might come up with a lot of ideas, but this is such a complex question, there is no easy answer. So this was your question, tell us. But we can't give you non-hope of saying that the official plan is going to take up to 5 years, because that doesn't do anything for us, because council is 4 years. And then the next council will want their own official plan and their own official plan. So your candidates for mayor and deputy mayor have to be advocates at the county, and we must use Collingwood's position having an ex-mayor as the MPP, and ex-mayor as the MPP, and see if we can move forward with pushing this. This is the place to be in Ontario, there's no question about it, but we need to protect it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLeod.
So just a few notes that I took on this, because the question was about how to balance things, preservation with economic development and green spaces. And one of the things that we can do, and I'm glad I met with your approval, Tim, regarding the vote that we took at the county last week, and we did vote to ask the province to give us some more thought when it comes to green spaces right across Simcoe County. So that's like Royal Medonte and Romero Township and places like that. What I can tell you is that when I was growing up and was visiting Collingwood from Glen Huron, there was no Central Park. That was the fairgrounds, and there was no Millennium Park because that was the terminals and the shipyards, and there was no amphitheater, and there was no Wilson Sheffield Park. Okay, well that's coming. It's not there yet, but there was no Sunset Point Park other than the camping. And so in the next couple of days, we're going to cut the ribbon on the new Sunset Point Park, and it's going to be gorgeous. I really recommend that you get over there to have a look at it. We didn't have the Awen Gathering Circle. That was a grassed over garbage dump. And now it's a gathering place, and I encourage you to be there on the 30th for Reconciliation Day as well, and the ceremonies that are going to take place there. And then next year, you can take your grandchildren to the splash pad that is also there. So I think one of the things that we need to do to be balanced is to live in gratitude. We have some pretty great stuff here that has been done over the last few years, and the future is looking bright. Wilson Sheffield Park, by the way, is going to have pickleball courts and tennis courts. Now, I know there's a bit of a scrap going on between the pickleball people and the tennis people, and we're going to try and find a way to thread that needle and keep everybody happy, and we really want to hear from all sides on that. I also want to say that one of the ways as well that we can find this balance is to support our conservation authorities. And it's a hard and difficult thing to understand that there's this entire other agency that takes care of planning and development and regulation, but also stewardship. So they actually fix the rivers and the streams for the fish and the critters that keep our water healthy. So we need to support them. And there's going to be coming in the budget in the next little while, there's been a whole revamp of them at the provincial level, and some real difficult decisions that have to be made by conservation authorities. And so when they come to the budget, we're going to be needing to have some conversations about how many dollars we're actually willing to part with for the real, on-the-ground, practical, pragmatic work that these agencies do on a shoestring budget. And so the next council, I'm really hoping we'll be able to support the conservation authorities, not just in their core work of regulation and planning, but also when it comes to the stewardship, because that has now become, and I know this is hard to understand, optional as far as the province goes. And so municipalities across Ontario are going to have to decide whether they want to have their water clean or not, whether they want to have streams and creeks rehabilitated. That seems kind of backwards to me. And so I'll be advocating very strongly at the table for Collingwood to step up to the plate when it comes to stewardship on places like the Black Ash Creek, on the Purdy River, and elsewhere across the watershed. I also want to talk a little bit about inclusionary zoning. Have I taken too much time? I haven't I? This is my favorite. So we had the opportunity to talk with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing at the AMO conference in Ottawa a little while ago. And one of the ideas that our very clever staff came up with is a thing called inclusionary zoning. And not to get too far into the weeds, but right now, the way zoning works is you can prohibit something and you can allow something, but you cannot force something. But we volunteered as Collingwood to be a pilot project for a thing called inclusionary zoning. And this is about housing, but it can also be about green space. And if we do it right. And so there's a conversation that's about to happen between Collingwood and the Municipal Affairs and Housing Ministry about these sorts of things so that we can maybe put into our comprehensive zoning bylaw, which underpins the official plan, the kind of stuff that is going to do what we need done to keep our community green and healthy.
I speak from a little bit of experience. I live in one of the communities that does not have a park, and 10 years ago when I moved here, my wife and I were constantly bombarded with questions from our kids, our two youngest kids, that where's our park? And it's not there. And it was too bad. I don't know all the details, but I'm being enlightened by present council members as to what happened. And sure, it was developer paid a little bit of money and put more homes in. So, long story short, I do not believe that that should happen again unless it's a very, very small parcel of land that the park will basically take up that parcel of land. As far as sensitive areas, they need to stay. Quite a few years ago, you may remember that there was talk of a golf course going in Silver Glen Marsh. Silver Creek, sorry. I think Greg Norman was going to develop it, I believe. Anyway, that got kiboshed, which is great, and that should never even come to be a question anymore. Those areas are extremely important to not only our area, but to Georgian Bay and the province itself. Wetlands are extremely important. I think now we're educated and we know how important they are. It should never be a question of developing them. As far as my platform goes, if any of you have read my website or looked at my literature, my platform is trails. New development needs to include trails, linking to existing trails. I would love to see this community be able to ride their bikes everywhere, not have to cross roads. If we need to have, well, you need to cross roads, but have bike trails on the roads that we can't link trails properly. I've heard stories many, many times of the shipyards when they closed down at the end of the day, everyone rode bikes home. I would love to see this town become more bike inclusive. That's just not my whole platform. It's the main part of it. That's one of the reasons I moved here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Potts.
Well, like I've referenced many times, growing up here, I've seen, with obviously the increase in development, my stance would be, I think we should slow down on the new development, fill in what we have, and get the green space protected. Being a past president of minor hockey, a past president of the Baseball Association, I firsthand seen the importance of green space and what our parks and everything, brought for us. The one concern I do have when we talk about tree canopy, being an employee with the town and being in the department in 2016 when we hired an employee that was a certified arborist. He's still on staff today, and at that time when we were trying to look towards our tree program, we tried to implement a tree crew with a certified arborist. We brought it to bargaining. I was the chair of the bargaining committee, and the council today turned down $1 premium an hour. So you look at now with all the trees and the condition we're in and where we're at with the ash borer and I guess the crisis with the trees is that's something we could have started to prevent back then, but we're only talking a few $1,000s. So we need to put money back into our tree canopy program. We need to put money back into our green space, and we need to slow development down so that we can all have a place to live in Collingwood where we all want to enjoy, and with a beautiful waterfront and our protected land. It's quite important that we keep that the way it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
I could stand up here and repeat pretty much everything that everybody said. I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to say that any new development should only be considered or approved only when it has the least amount of impact or compromise on our planned infrastructure, existing natural areas, and green space. It's all about that conversation.
Thank you, and finally, Mr. Sanders.
I always hate to be the last speaker of an event because I'm stopping all of you from going and doing whatever else you want to do this afternoon. Clearly, the official plan has been set by some other panelists here today. The official plan and then the following comprehensive zoning bylaw are the tools that we have as a community to make sure that our green space is protected and to make sure that development occurs in our vision as much as is possible. And I say as much as is possible because, again, others have said, we are identified as the growth node in the Greater Golden Horseshoe Growth Plan and the Simcoe County Growth Plan. Also, the province of Ontario, through its provincial policy statement, has dictated that growth shall only occur in existing urban nodes, so municipalities, and shall only occur through intensification. So some of the things that I think we need to make sure as we as public give our final input into the official plan and the comprehensive zoning bylaw is to make sure that as we intensify, I was speaking with someone earlier this afternoon, if we have 3 large apartment buildings, let's make sure that there isn't only parking space there. Let's make sure that we do have those neighborhood parks or the community parks as part of that development, a place where young families can go and their children can play, where a grandparent or grandparents can go and sit with their grandchildren, where anybody can go and just sit and look at the clouds or contemplate their navels or whatever they want to do, but in that safe green space. The official plan, the draft official plan actually does do a fairly good job in protecting those environmental protection areas, so the Silver Creek, the Black Ash Creek, the Pretty River, and the wetlands that contribute to that. What I would like to see in the zoning bylaw specific to that, though, is to stop the development community from doing its environmental assessments on those wetlands when it's dry. Let's make sure that those environmental assessments and the impact assessments are made at the wet season or at high lake level. The one challenge that we had with the golf course, I forget who, with the Silver Creek wetlands, was that the environmental consultants came in at a record low lake level and said, oh, we have all this developable land. Well, we as a council said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So we restricted at that time the development nodes that were there. Unfortunately, we did not, we failed the community, we did not take advantage of the opportunity to purchase the Silver Creek wetlands and turn it into a conservation area. So we do have opportunities. It's really important for you as community members and the rest of the community members to make sure that your visions, your views, your wants and needs for those green lands and the way that development occurs in our town is good for us and for our children and for our grandchildren and into the future. To go to the First Nations or the Indigenous visions, let's make sure that development grows considering 7 generations forward, but also 7 generations backward. And I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates for being here. I hope there will be continued engagement between yourselves and the residents of Lighthouse Point and indeed all the electors in Collingwood. I hope for a strong turnout and I wish you all success. Like most things, nothing happens without somebody in the background. I think the sound system was great today, and let's have a big round of applause for Jack. Okay, with that, I'll leave you to engage one-on-one, and we don't like any blood on the carpet.